Welcome to Subramani. What are the things which you can do to improve as an investor? So here is my list, and I've made these lists many times. So this is my list as of 2023 March, right? So it could keep changing, and it could be a lot of similarities also. So first, always keep learning. There is no doubt about that. These books here have been my best investments. I mean, there's one book which I bought for 400 rupees, which gave me returns of about 4.5 lakhs way back in 2007 end, right at the peak of the infrastructure boom. I got rid of a lot of infrastructure shares. Of course, the human mind says, why didn't I get rid of everything? Well, I didn't get rid of everything because I will never go to a zero in infrastructure, right? So I sold Tata Power, I sold Cholamandalam, I sold Kotak, I sold a lot of those things which I thought had boomed too much. Larsen and Toubro, some tech stocks perhaps, I don't even remember. Yeah, so a lot of those stocks I sold, and I was sitting on cash when the market crashed. It was sheer luck, or the fact that I was anyway buying books to read. So I must thank the shopkeeper for showing me that book, otherwise I would have missed it. It was a book by Ken Fisher. Anyway, I've spoken about it separately. So be learning, and when I say learning, I mean when you read a book, make notes. Please make notes and understand and see how you can implement it, right? So if you think that, oh, this Tata Power has a PE of 100, but then it is going to grow perennially for the next 42 years, so 100 PE is good, maybe you're wrong. So if you think you made a mistake, learn. If you think you got it right, repeat, right? So always be learning, and learning means not just reading. All means reading, writing, speaking, everything, attending conferences, watching YouTube videos. All that is learning, and making notes and implementing. Only then the journey is complete. I'm very happy to do a session saying talk about these 3 books, because it means you buy a book, you read it, you make PPT, you understand, you assimilate, and then you talk to an audience about it. I think more and more investor clubs should do this, right? So do that, keep learning. That's a very good thing. Also understand that we have all been brought up in middle class families, and we have all been brought up in middle class families, and middle class families, a lot of guilt is there in doing nothing, right? Only if you're very rich can you say, today I'm doing nothing, I'm taking a gap year in my education. It's very difficult for middle class families to understand this. Middle class parents don't understand this. I'm a middle class parent, I'm a middle class son, and I know how my mother would say, oh, don't just sit there doing nothing, do something, right? Completely wrong advice for an investor. If you're an investor, there are long times when you have to do nothing, just sit doing nothing. It's very difficult. I have friends who are young, who are businessmen, who just can't sit doing nothing. So when they're very fidgety, they'll pick up their phone, they will keep watching, they'll do something. Calm your mind, go for a walk, go for a run, do yoga, do what the hell you want to do, you do something other than investing, because investing is a lot of boring time when you have nothing to do. Listen to music, go dancing, do whatever you want. Maybe go to hospital and visit people who have no other visitors, sit with them, talk, have gratitude, go to the temple, pray, but do nothing on your investment portfolio for long periods of time. You may have to do nothing, right? So a lot of my portfolio is doing nothing. Also understand volatility is not risk. Volatility will always be there, and the best example I like to give is maybe 500,000 flights every day fly various parts of the world. There could be one crash in a year or 2 crashes in a year, but very many aircraft flying. I mean, you and I must have all experienced this when they say the pilot has switched on the safety belt switch, so please wear your safety belt. The weather is not very good, so the flight will be turbulent. So we've gone through turbulence. Once the turbulence was so bad in the Bombay-Delhi flight that we had to get off at Ahmedabad, waited there for some time, and then flew to Delhi, right? So some of these things happen. There will be a lot of volatility. It does not mean crash. So volatility is not risk. Risk is when there is a permanent loss of capital, like what Buffett says. Yes, there will be permanent loss of capital also. If you and I have invested in Anil Ambani group, ADAG group, I was to say, is yes, you must have lost some capital, but then you will lose capital. These things will happen. If you had applied for the original shares of Zomato or Paytm or any of this, you would have lost money. There will be permanent loss of capital. That is risk, and that is bound to happen. You have to be careful that you reduce it to the minimum, right? So make sure that understand that volatility will be there, but volatility does not mean risk. Also understand that risk will be there. You will lose money. It's easy for Buffett to say there are only two rules. One is don't lose money, and second is remember rule number one. It is impossible for you not to take risk. Look at the American economy. So much of risk taking is there. So many businesses get wiped out. So many banks get wiped out. Some banks get protected, some don't get protected, right? So what happens to promoters of banks which don't get protected? They get wiped out. They leverage their houses, they lose their houses, they take risk. Don't worry about one SVB bank going away. There are so many thousands of banks which are doing well. People do take risk, people do run into trouble, people do well, people do badly. All those things are part of life. Similarly, in your investing life, you have to know that there will be some loss of capital. These things will happen, but you should not lose your sleep over it. Understand which businesses have moats, and therefore your value investing can work. But also understand that it is very difficult to know where the moats are. For example, I do think that Zomato is a very good business to be in because it has the last mile connectivity. But what stops Amazon from starting exactly the same service? What happens if Amazon gets into food delivery business? What happens if Amazon gets into airline ticket booking? What happens if Google gets into airline ticket booking? What happens if Google gets into giving you products exactly when you want, simply because based on your search, right? As their AI gets more and more intelligent, they will be able to do that. Somebody will be able to call and say, sir, are you looking for tickets to XYZ and can we help? Right? These things can happen, will happen. So understanding moats is getting more and more difficult. You don't know from where competition can come. If Amazon creates its own brand of shampoo and soap, will it be a threat to Unilever? Difficult question to ask. Does Unilever have a moat? Yes, it looks like the brands are very strong. What happens if Amazon comes out with shampoo at half the price or soap at half the price? Will it hit the HUL market in India? I don't know, but any of these things could happen. So understanding moats is difficult, but understanding moats is a must. So with this, find out what really happens when understand one very important thing. When inflation goes up, interest rates go up. When interest rates go up, asset prices fall, not just bond prices. So understand the impact of inflation. Inflation is good for equity markets in the long run. Inflation is bad for equity markets in the short run. In the short run, asset prices will fall, so your equity prices will fall. But in the long run, inflation actually means equity will have to give greater returns, otherwise nobody will come into equity. Therefore, equity prices will fall to such an extent that it becomes attractive for people to say, oh, now equities looks more attractive, so people will start. If you are an SIP investor, don't worry. If you are a direct equity investor, get into those shares which are good during inflation times if inflation is high, and then when interest rates fall because inflation is down and say the GSEC comes down to 4.5%, that is the time maybe you should look at companies which have debt, right? So do all those things. Don't get into trap like saying I'm a value investor or I'm a growth investor. For example, I am a intraday investor, I'm a delivery based trader, intraday trader, delivery based trader. I don't trade futures and options. Well, not much for sure. Don't get into I'm a value investor, I'm a growth investor. Don't believe that Buffett doesn't make money in airlines, so we should not buy airlines. That may be true for a saturated airline market like US. Maybe in India that is not true. So there is lot of reading that you can do, lot of learning you can do, but you cannot do a cut paste. You cannot say, oh, this is good for Buffett, so it's good for me. Not true. He's in a completely different class of investor. He's a full-time investor. He's got a team which is looking after his investments. He is sitting and reading and implementing. You are different. You are working full day. You're watching some television channel or videos like this for half an hour a day. Don't compare yourself to a Mukesh Ambani or a Warren Buffett. And these are businessmen. Warren Buffett is not a fund manager. So please understand all these things while you're investing. Also understand that getting yourself into a trap does not help. I do all kinds of things, right? So I invest in IPOs, I invest in NFOs, I invest in foreign mutual funds, invest in Indian mutual funds. I do all kinds of things. I do direct equity, I don't do direct equity abroad, but I invest in funds which invest abroad. So I do all kinds of things. I've invested in companies which are looking for dividend yield abroad. So all kinds of combinations happen. Don't fall into a trap of saying I'm only this. Don't also think that EMT, or rather MT as it sounds, of course there is something called an efficient market theory, EMT, but does not mean the market is perfect. But market is a fantastic indicator of what is happening. There is something which you can't see which the market tells you. At 1400 you could not see that somebody did not like Patanjali, and Patanjali was getting hammered down. Even today at 900 it is not a cheap stock. Yes, prices have fallen. So understand market signals. Market is not perfect, but market is always trying to go towards perfection. That's the market moves towards perfection. Markets are never perfect, but markets are very good indicators. I wish India had a very good and efficient debt market also, so you would have known which bond to buy, which bond not to buy. Fund managers don't get good signals from their own friends, because there is a huge echo chamber saying, sir, aap to galti nahi kar sakte ho, and the guy believes he can't make mistakes. Huge mistakes by debt fund managers, equity fund managers keep coming to light, and you realize one thing: the so-called independent directors, so-called independent trustees don't push back a star fund manager. That's a very risky thing. Same thing, I fell prey to the fund managers' mistakes, right? So when a fund manager makes mistakes, what can you do? You can either, for example, if there is a fund manager who is building a portfolio where he believes that he should not own Reliance, you can go and buy Reliance. But if there is a fund manager who's bought Yes Bank, which I thought was an atrocious buy, even at 200 or 300 or at 82 the last, when the came out with an offer, there's nothing you can do. You can buy put options in Yes Bank, but that's too risky, right? But some of these mistakes you will watch, the directors also will watch, the other trustees will also watch. So don't think that the board is going to protect you. Against big frauds, yes, they will protect you. Against mistakes, there's no protection. But then if the fund has bought 1%, has put 1% of its money in Yes Bank, when Yes Bank was 300, that was okay, you could still take it, because there were other things which they had audited. Maybe they bought 8% of the fund was State Bank of India, and 1% of the fund was Yes Bank. So the Yes Bank got hurt. Yes, of course it got hurt, but then when the State Bank of India went up, the NAV got adjusted. Understand what your fund manager is doing. Understand that the people around him will not push him. They will just not push him, and he is used to the echo chamber of saying you can't make mistakes. So where he goes around the country saying what a stud he is. Be very careful of fund managers who have become too big to fail or become too much of a stud. See if they are arrogant or not arrogant. This is a very important thing to learn from fund managers. Arrogant fund managers will fall one day and they will hurt you, right? Understand that index funds are a fantastic innovation, but not everybody is happy with an index fund. I have very little money in an Indian index fund, but I have money in the world index fund, because I have no capability of deciding which world index fund how much to put. Am I making money in that? Answer is no. Can I invest more money in that? There are some restrictions, but I have invested in an active fund which invests in different parts of the world. I have no ability to understand. So this fund manager invests in different funds around the world. So I'm happy riding something like that. So somewhere I'm a direct investor for Indian equities, but I'm a mutual fund investor for foreign equities. I'm a mutual fund investor for Balance Advantage Fund and multi-asset fund. I cannot. Simplicity is very useful. So one equity fund, or rather one index fund, one term insurance, one savings bank account, one credit card, this should be enough. However, if you are a person who needs to talk at parties about the companies in which you have invested, etc., maybe you should have some indirect equity portfolio, but make sure that you understand what you're doing. When I'm looking for a fund manager, I largely look for integrity and humility. Believe me, these are the only two things you can see, because all fund managers are well qualified. There would be chartered accountant, rank holders, IIM, IIT, all those things. There is nothing really to pick between one fund manager and another. Also, some of your favorite fund managers will retire, some will drop dead, some will start off on their own. So if you have invested, if you have invested say 90 lakhs, that has become 5 crores. in one fund, and the fund manager is going to retire in a year or two. You need to have your action plan as to say, will you withdraw now, will you withdraw later, will you de-risk, right? All those things you need to know for yourself. What all do you need to do? And if you're an advisor watching this, what advice would you give to your client? What would you do and what would you not do? Looking for integrity in a fund manager is not really very simple, but yes, also understand that most of us have reached where we have reached, including fund managers, because we were born in the 1960s. We were born to good wombs, where we got good quality education. Good quality education, I mean simple school education in English medium, and then being able to understand the importance of doing a CA or LLB or IIT, IIM, right? Being able to have the sheer luck of doing this, right? So if you were in a different location, if you were in a small town, people like me, if we were in a small town, let's say if I were in a small village, I would have thought about equities only by the age of 35 or 40, right? So there's not enough time for compounding. So a lot of us are birth lottery, right? So womb lottery or whatever you want to call it, right? So one very important thing to improve as an investor is please chase happiness. See what will make you happy. Being with friends will make you happy. Throwing them a impromptu party, surprise party for their birthday will make you happy. Going for cycling, going for running, all those, whatever will make you happy. Cycling is a little dangerous now because the chairman of or the MD of SVB Bank said, what do you do for relaxing? He said cycling. So be careful. So bankers are also into cycles. Just jokes apart, so these are some of the things which you can do. Thank you Charlie Munger, thank you Buffett, and thanks to all those people from whom I have learned. This is nothing original. Thank you.